Welcome to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. Anna Troup. How are you doing, Anna?
Doing very well. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much for giving up a part of your evening to have a chat with us. Stephen and I know very well who Anna Troup is. And I think a lot of people who listen to the podcast will have heard the name Anna Troup. But in the words of Anna Troup, who are you and how would you describe yourself to our listeners, Anna?
Well, it's a tricky one, and it's changed over the years. But right now, definitely mum first. Still, the children are 23 and 21, but nonetheless, still definitely mum first. I'm still working, so I describe myself as somebody who is still working and a non-exec director. So I do that. And I suppose because I'm constantly injured, I describe myself as an endurance athlete nowadays rather than a runner because I spend my life doing all sorts of other training too. So I think that's probably how I describe myself.
Okay, thank you very much. That we'll get to. Maybe we can just jump. Yeah. The question I sent you is a guide for me to stay on track. But already I, I've got a question about how do you balance home life, work life with training? How does that work?
I'm not sure there's ever a perfect balance.
Hmm.
Um, but you can get to a point of something like harmony where they're all sort of moving together. But I've never got to a point where balance is perfect. Either one is taking off or the others are taking off. I
Hmm.
think I look ahead and I try and work out through a diary where I'm going to. I generally look at a diary. Work has to obviously come first. The children, if something goes wrong, overtake everything else.
Yep.
And then I try and always slot training in, knowing where work is taking place. So living in the Lake District, we'll often look at the weather as well. It's like, that looks terrible. We won't train. We'll do something different here, or we'll train in the afternoon rather than the morning. So I flex it according to weather. Um, but generally, it's slot in the work and then fit in the training around it. And I think generally as we got older, it's get up early and get it done.
That was going to be my next question. Do you prefer to train in the morning or is it an after work thing? Is it generally mornings you prefer?
I prefer that because that means you've got it done.
Yes.
The
But
later the day goes, the less likely and the more reasons you can find not to do
mm,
it.
yeah,
So,
there's less appetite and motivation as
yeah.
we go through the day. You mentioned the Lake District. Can I ask where about in the Lake District you live? Stephen and I have been down the lakes for the last few years, down at Lakeland 5100.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
been down, so we've been in Coniston and Ambleside and Kentmere, so on. Where about are you in the lakes?
We're in Grasmere, so just between Ambleside and Keswick, really, right in the middle of that stretch, right in the middle. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Right, back on track to the question set. Does Anna Troop have a running coach?
Definitely not. I don't think a running coach would put up with me, to be honest. I make it up as I go along, and as you just heard, I flex it around my day, and that means sometimes I get it really wrong and probably do too much, and but generally over time, it's worked its way through. I would love to find a running coach. I
Hmm.
just think at this stage that's quite hard, especially as I am so prone to getting injured. They'd have to be able to coach across sort of multi-disciplines. I'd probably end up more with a tri coach or a duathlon coach than I would with a pure ultra running coach.
Ah, okay, okay. Give us a bit of backstory about your, well, your athletic journey, not just your running journey, because we know you've done other things as well. So what's Anna Troop's backstory?
So I suppose I've always been sporty. I've always loved sport. Maybe it's the right way to put it, and it's always been a big part of my life. But I guess I started at school with lots of netball, and so netball was the first sport that I did at university. And then at university, everyone rowed, so I rowed as well. Turned out I could row. I was quite good at rowing, so I picked up rowing at university. And I think that's where I really learnt to train because rowers learn how to train. And
Mhm.
I think that's also where I started to build quite a big aerobic base. And I guess that's where some of the endurance started to come through. And I carried on rowing after university for quite a chunk of time. And then as part of rowing, I ended up after university becoming a lightweight rower. We did quite a lot of running as part of weight management, but also it was just quite a useful tool as sort of extra additional sessions. And I guess I also learned to weight train as a rower because we were always doing strength work. So I think the rowing really set me up for the rest of my endurance, I suppose, my
Okay.
endurance athletic life. Um, then we did quite a lot of marathons. From marathons, it was quite a natural move into doing Ironman and long distance triathlons and duathlons. And then I suppose once the children were that bit bigger and there was a little bit more time, that was when we started moving into ultras. But that was 2000, yeah, 2011. So by then I was 41. So there's been a big chunk of other endurance sport all the way up to 2011. And so that was really when I first started doing ultra.
Okay. Rowing competitively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, me and my husband both rode competitively. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not a rower. I know what rowing is, but I know only because of things like the Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games. You can watch it there. Who did you row for?
So outside of Commonwealth cycles, so I
Uh-huh.
rode at university, so I was at Oxford, so I rode for Oxford, I stroked the blue boat for Oxford. So after Oxford, I then continued and did lightweight rowing up into sort of home countries, which is in between Commonwealth years. You have the similar sort of match. So I rode for England at the home countries.
Hmm.
And then I stopped rowing because it went very professional and you had to decide career or rowing because the lottery grant system came in, which meant that you had to then move your life to Caversham. And it was a decision at that point. And my decision was I wasn't prepared to put all my eggs in the sports basket because I
Okay.
think that's quite a big decision at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry, my heart went a bit of a flutter when you said Oxford. So, Oxford, Cambridge, have you taken part in the boat race?
Yeah. So yeah, I straight the women in 91 and I have a daughter taking part this year in the boat race. She took part last year and my husband also raced at Cambridge and was president of Cambridge. So yes, we're quite a boat race family.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I, you're the first person I think I've ever spoken to that's taken part in the boat race. So thank you very much. I love a first. Love a first.
Well,
So,
this year, put your money on Cambridge men. Cambridge
oh,
men are definitely.
you heard it here first. Brilliant. So your daughter taking part. Is that like full cycle then?
I guess it is. Yeah, I guess it.
Yeah.
Although that's just she's a much taller, more sort of classic rower person than I am. But yes, she is racing and loves it. Absolutely loves it. And again, it's been really fun watching that rowing training create an endurance athlete. I guess she's learned how to train. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. The wee avenues we go down, we're not expecting to talk about. Um, and for those people listening, and yes, we are a running podcast. We will bring it back. We will bring it back to running. So, but the other sports that you mentioned, triathlon, duathlon, doing these sort of things, how has that enhanced or enabled your running journey? And you mentioned, sorry, I asked too many questions. I'm intrigued as well about the strength and conditioning stuff. Is that something that you still do? Have
Yeah,
you
for
always
sure.
done it?
So as a rower, you do an awful lot of weights. It's very much about being strong, and it's all over body strength, including core. So I think from day one we were taught how to lift. So I think that's quite useful. It means you're not scared of big weights, and you're not scared of a weights room, and you know how to work your way around. So I think that was really good. I think that the sort of duathlon, triathlon teaches you to apply your, I suppose, your physiology and in your endurance training in to a different sport. So it means that for me, cross training is an easy thing to do. So when I get injured, I can't run, I would just automatically get on a bike, usually an indoor bike now because it's just more straightforward. I use a watt bike an awful lot, but it means that I suppose also you're just used to doing the work. It teaches you to do some fairly boring training and it's just long and it's quite steady and that's what we all learnt to do. So I think that's quite useful for ultra running because you learn just to be in your head, just get on with it and train very consistently over sort of big blocks of time. So I think as well it teaches you how to think about the physiology of training, how to do the sort of long, low, steady sessions, the easier sessions, and then how to put in intervals, how to use, I don't know, pyramids. So I think all of the training and all of the different sports go into the ultra running because they're all part and parcel of the same thing. And it's all just part and parcel of endurance sport, really. So I think it's been incredibly useful, and I still fall back on it all the time. Not sure what session to do on a bike. I'll go back and think of rowing days and think, oh, okay, I'll do 3 15-minute pieces, or I'll do a set of intervals, and I'll mimic hills, or I'll, yeah. So it works. It for me, it works really well. But I think the main thing is it just teaches you to train, and there's no getting away with it in ultra and in any longer event. If you don't put in the base miles, it's really hard. So
how? So there's loads of questions flying through my head. How do you stay motivated to train? The days that you think, maybe not today, but do you get days like that?
oh yeah, for sure, definitely. So it helps because there's two of us that train, so my husband trains too. So generally, it's unusual that both of us will go, nah. If I if I really feel like that, it usually means it's time for a full day off. Because what
Okay.
I do find is that you'll think, oh, I can't be bothered, oh, I can't be bothered. And then generally on a day where you know you're fine to train, you find the motivation just to train. Whereas there are some days where, no, I can't be bothered, no, I can't be, no, I'm not training. And on those days, it's just like, okay, it must be time for a proper rest. That's fine. Take a whole day off. And
Yeah.
then generally the next day, you're like back to motivated. So I
Okay.
suppose I've been at it a long time, which helps me know myself and know which is what laziness versus take some time off.
Okay.
But also, I kind of know every session is another brick in the wall. Every session keeps you moving forward, and every session helps you get into and do the next race. So
Yeah.
I love training. I love being fit. It just is something I just enjoy. So
Brilliant. Yeah. One of the things I heard on a podcast, Trail Runner Nation, they speak about one is better than zero. So getting something done means you've done something. And as you mentioned the word, it's a brick, another wee brick in the wall that's going to build us up to our next event, as you say. And you mentioned about when was your first ultra marathon? Let's speak about ultra marathons. When was your first ultra marathon, Anna?
it was the Hardmoors 60. That was the
Right.
very first one. We had no clue what we were doing, none at all. Massive rucksacks. I think I was doing it in walking shoes. It was just something completely and utterly different. We had no idea what we were letting ourselves in for. And that, even now probably, but certainly back then, was a relatively lightly sort of aid stationed ultra. It was really sort of gritty. And so I remember getting there and thinking, wow, just a few jelly babies? You've got to be kidding, really? So I think it was a bit of a baptism of fire, but also it was the most amazing experience to finish. Just extraordinary. And they had a Shire horse category. I don't know if they still have a Shire horse category, but it just seemed like this amazing community and just such fun. I mean, we were just doing it as an adventure, and it was a real adventure. So that was the first one.
Okay. And looking at the sort of stats that are available, um, that then led to you then going abroad and doing some things in France, in Italy, back to France as well. So how have things changed? You mentioned about the big backpack. What were you wearing on your feet back? This is 2012, Hardmoors 60. What were you wearing on your feet then? Can you remember?
Oh, literally a pair of Merrill walking shoes. Literally.
Okay,
And
right,
they
right.
really, really hurt. So
Mm.
and the backpack was huge because I'd read somewhere that trail runners can get hypothermic. So I had absolutely everything possible with me. Um, yeah. And then I think we did things like the Brighton 100K. And that for us as road runners was quite straightforward. That was like you just go out and you run it. And in those days, that was quite an easy thing for us to do when there was aid stations every 10K. So that was a totally different thing. And then France and Italy was starting to, because we wanted to do UTMB, so it was starting to do some specific training for UTMB. Italy was, I think, UTMR, the Ultra Trail de Monte Rosa, and that
Mm.
was because a friend at work said, "Oh, my sister's putting on a race. Can you go and do it?" So we went and did the very first edition of
Is that
UTMR.
Lizzie Hawker?
Yeah, and I used to
Yeah.
work with her brother. Alistair. So
Ah,
it was Alistair just said, "Can you go and do it? Go and do it. Lizzie's putting on a race." So we went and did it, and that was really lovely because it literally was that very first one. Um,
brilliant.
but again, and I think we did that, and then went off and did the week or so later one of the UTMB series. I can't remember which one. I think it was probably TDS that year. So yeah, so France was really about always getting and doing UTMB and being really ready for UTMB and all that up and down.
Brilliant. And then I noticed as well from your running history, you've done the West Highland Way Challenge race. Yeah. And well, you won it actually. You came first in the West Highland Way Challenge race. Have you ever considered doing the West Highland Way race as it is? Like there's the race and there's the challenge race, as you probably know. Yeah. Have you ever thought about throwing your hat in the ring for the West Highland Way race?
I would have done, and we would have done. But again, back in the day, I think the differentiation or the difference between the two was that one, you really needed support, and the
Mm,
other, you
you
didn't.
don't. Yeah.
And so for us, it was just dead easy. The two of us went, we did it together, we just raced it together, and it was very low key. And the bigger one was just hard to get into. And I think you had to have a support crew. Now, nowadays, I could get my husband to crew me, I'd find someone to crew me. But back then it wasn't an option. So I
Yeah.
suspect now as well, it's
Yeah.
too
Okay.
short, too fast.
Okay. I'm sure Adrian Stott, race director, will be listening in. So we'll see. We will see. Now, you also you've done a lot of different types of events. There's a lot of the ultra teams trot and things like these. So have you done the sort of the canal races alongside nothing like that? No?
No,
Do you
again, they're
prefer the hilly
very
stuff?
well. Again, I tried to get into the canal races, but I never got an entry. They used to fill up really, really quickly, so you had to be super
Hmm.
organised. The Thames Trot, we lived in Henley, so it was dead easy. You could just, it was, a quick sort of half an hour drive to the start, and then you ran home. So it was and again, 50 miles, you could knock it out quite quickly back then. So it was quite a good one to do. And my husband always says it's really quite nice to be home before sort of, he prefers to be home by lunch, but home by tea is a really good option. So, and the Thames Trot was always over within about 8 hours, I think. So it was a good one to do. And again, back then we were running faster and lighter, and it was, yeah, and I hadn't discovered the really long stuff. So we were just doing these things. You could just enter, and we just went and did them. And then I think trail running at that stage, you could just enter. You didn't have to
Yeah.
plan out your whole year. Whereas I think that's what's really different now. I mean, even UTMB, when we first did it in 2014, it was quite straightforward. Yes, you had to put your entry in, but actually, as long as you got your points, you generally got a place. And then that's now a totally different world. And
Yeah.
everything became very, very oversubscribed. And so that ability to just go, oh, should we go and do, really changed. So a lot of the races that you'll see were just ones we went, oh, should we go and do that? Oh, we've got nothing on in 3, 4, 5 weeks time. Let's go. Why don't we go and do that one? So that's what you'll probably see. There was no rhyme, reason, strategy. It was just, oh, that looks fun. Let's go and do
Yeah.
it.
Well, that world's changed, hasn't it? I mean, getting a place in a race has changed because a lot of races now, including some of the ones we've spoken about, will run a ballot system where there's no guaranteed entry. You've got to enter a ballot and cross your fingers. And if that doesn't work for you, they've then got to try and go and find something else. So, but there are, I think, maybe not across, even in the winter, maybe, but a lot of the time, in the good part of the year, you can run an ultra marathon every week if you wanted to. Not advisable, but you could, if you wanted to, go and do that. Um, Arc of Attrition's one that you've also taken part in. How did you
Yes.
find the How did you find the Arc?
We love the Arc. So the first year we did the Arc, we hadn't recce'd, and we went down and did it. And we actually, our next door neighbour, who I think was about 70 at least at the time, said, "Oh, I'll come down and I'll crew for you." And that was just a really fun thing to do. But it was again early on, 3 storms hit at once. We hadn't recce'd, and we didn't know what the next bit was like. And people were saying, "Oh, that's really bad out there. You don't want to be doing that bit with 3 storms
Mm,
hitting." And she had a car and she was there, and we just went, okay, we won't risk that. And I remember the race organisers saying, but you both look fine. And us saying, well, we are fine. We're totally fine. But that's apparently really bad. So we better not go and do that bit. And they were like, no, honestly, you'll be fine. And we're like, no, no, no. Everyone says it's really bad. So we're stopping here. And so we stopped on that first one just because the three storms came in and we had a support crew. So we said, right, that's it. No support crews ever, because the minute you've got a support crew, it's just dead easy to get into a car. And it's just
Okay.
too comfortable and too straightforward. And if we hadn't had a crew, we'd have just had to carry on. We'd have had no option because the B&B is miles away. So you've just got to keep going. So then we went back and did it the second year, and that was good. And I think I was second in that year. And we both went, well, if we'd had a support crew, we'd have gone a lot faster. So we went back, and a great friend from Centurion Running came and crewed for us, and he did an amazing job. And then that was the year I went on and won it. And it was terrible and muddy and all the other things, but having that support vehicle meant you could be in and out of aid stations really quickly and just keep moving. So we suddenly found the real benefit of having a support crew. But yeah, that was the story of the Arc, and I really love the Arc. I think it's a fabulous race, and the winter piece of it makes it really fun. And now I wouldn't worry about the three storms because I know exactly what the course looks like, and I know to expect the weather. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you've just spoke about something really important there as well, is that if you can get a foot on the route, so you know what the terrain is like, and you know what it's going to be like. And we've spoken, I don't know what season it was. We had Fergie on, the race director of Arc of Attrition. Lovely guy, brilliant guy. And I know that they had all sorts of weather this year when it was going on this year as well. That you won the Arc of Attrition in 2020, and that sort of shoots us forward to what our whole topic of conversation, I think, is going to be based around, and that was the Spine. And in 2021, you won the Summer Spine. You did that. Was that your first time on the Pennine Way racing, the full Spine, or had you done?
Oh, yeah. No, I'd not done any spine races before. That was the first one. We'd
Well,
signed up.
My question is, what intrigued you to sign up for a 268-mile race?
Well, we signed up for the winter, and it got cancelled because of COVID.
Okay.
And so we thought, okay, well, we trained. Why didn't we do the summer? And again, where I went out, so this is 2021. I think in 2021, you could probably still quite straightforwardly get places later in the summer because maybe it wasn't as oversubscribed as it now is. And so we sort of took that fitness and said, right, we'll go and do the summer. And it was just, we wanted to do it as an adventure. It was both of us doing it together. We had no clue how that would play out. We had no clue whether we could do it. We knew we could do hundreds, but there's something very different from going from 100 to 268. And it was just, let's see what happens. And we had a lot of fun recceing it. So by then we now have 2021, I'm 51. We've got more time. So I've gone non-exec as opposed to full-time by then. And it means that we've got that little bit more flexibility. The children are older, and we were able to go and do recce's on the course. And so we knew the course, well, sort of knew the course. Richard knew the course, and I was following him. And then it was just like, right, let's see what happens. Let's go and try it. And it was really nerve-wracking and worrying and all those, scary, but it was just a big new thing to try. But there was no other reason for doing it other than let's have an adventure.
If we can, for a Men in Black moment with 2022 and 2025, go back to 2021. What was your biggest lesson that you learned in 2021? Can you think back to that?
So my biggest spine lesson in 2021 is I had to, after it, learn how to be really confident navving on my own, because I'd always relied on Richard to nav, because we'd always run it as a pair, and he was unwell at Hardmoors and needed to stay there for quite some time, and in the end sent me on. So we're 105 miles in and sent me on, and I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing at all. I mean, I can use my watch, and I've done it. Then I can use a maps on my phone, but there's nothing like actually doing it. So I roughly knew how to do it, but I'd never had to do it in anger. And suddenly I was out there on my own having to do it in anger, and that really motivated me to make sure that I'm never going to be a let's go out and do compasses and bearings, and that's just not my thing. Not really too interested in that, but I needed to get my spine nav, which is a bit of a different thing, really up to scratch. And I've got quite a good memory of where I've been, and so over the years I sort of remember quite large chunks of the course now.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I now know how to get myself out of trouble as well if I do manage to get myself in a muddle. But that year, there are pictures of me going round in circles on the tracker, just lost.
Right. Yeah, there's brilliant, not brilliant for her, but Summer Spine last year, Gillian McGill, good previous guest friend of the show, found herself going round in circles through a forest, um, either just before or just after Burness, going round in that same bit of forest for, it felt like hours, she said. But so I'm going to be 100% open and transparent. This is a totally self-indulgent for me because I'm doing the Spine Summer South Challenger in June coming up this year. And navigation is one of the big things, I think, for everybody that's taking on something new. And I know you've also done and won the Lakeland 100 course. So for the Lakeland races, you get the wee pocketbook that describes turn left at the big pink house and all that sort of stuff. With regards to Lakeland and the Pennine Way, is the navigation similar? Is there way markings and what's it like?
Oh, there's no way markings on the Lakeland, whereas there are all the Pennine Way signs. Now, I mean, they're there, but they're not always there. So you have to sometimes know to look for them. And I think so you do need a watch as well. And I think that the biggie with the Pennine Way is that you need to know how to get out of fields. It's often quite easy to get in. And then where you exit that field is often not quite as obvious, and particularly at night.
Might an exit be a gate, a stile, or climbing a wall?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
And sometimes as well to get in, it looks like maybe from your GPS you're going down one side of the wall, but actually you need to be on the other side of the wall. And maybe there's an entrance on both sides of the wall from another field. And so it's small things like that. And then, but if you can't find an exit, generally you've gone wrong. But it's small things that can sort of really throw you, particularly when you're tired. It's quite easy to make these small nav errors that just take ages.
Yeah, talking about fields and when you're saying that, Anna, about fields and can't get out, I'm thinking about cows now. You any experiences with cows on the Pennine Way?
I haven't. People have. Horses, when we were recceing, there's a particularly a field with quite a nasty horse in it, not a happy horse, but a sort of rearing up bucking horse that wasn't great. I think cows, there are, that compared to Race Across Scotland, nothing. Race Across Scotland was loads of cows, but no, the Pennine Way I haven't, but some people definitely have.
Yeah,
So I think it's just sometimes it's just luck. Where are they in the middle of that field?
yeah. See, well, my experience has been I've heard about the people who have met the cows. People who haven't don't mention it because they haven't met them. So
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. So recce's are incoming for me. So this is very much appreciated, this chat, and thank you very much for that. So let's go back. We'll turn off that Men in Black thing. 2021, you won the spine race. You then went back the next year and won it again, 2022. What happened then?
So 2022, I went back because I knew I could do it faster. And so that was great. Then we just did lots of fun training. It was sunny, it was summer. I could feel so I have coalitions in my feet, and I could feel one of my feet. It was just an ache, but I was like, no, I'm sure it's nothing. No, no, no. And I'm running well, and I'm really enjoying it. And we've got UTMB in the diary, and I love UTMB. So we were going over to do UTMB, and I was quite excited because at that point I was running relatively well. And I remember going out, and we're driving down, and we just were going for a jog in the morning on the drive down, and I couldn't run on it. It just was too sore to run on it, and it was like, this isn't great, but maybe it's 2 weeks before the race. If I don't do too much on it, I'm sure it'll be fine. And I remember the night before the race, my eldest saying to me, if you start, you know the chances are it's going to break. You'll be lucky if it doesn't. And then you'll have to take 3 to 6 months off. That's your decision. But the chances are it's going to break. So are you going to start? And what's the plan? And I thought I'd wing it, and start on it. And I got 50, well, almost 50 miles in. It was just above Courmayeur when I just landed badly on it, and I just felt it break. And it was like, ah, I can't believe it. It has broken. So I went in. There's a little aid station just above Courmayeur, Colchicrute, and I just went in there and we just put a bandage around it, strapped it up. And then I just thought, well, I'm just going to carry on. So my husband ran past me at this point on the way down to Courmayeur, and I said, I'll see you at the finish. And then I just basically sort of hiked. I could go up quite fast. I just couldn't come down because I couldn't literally weight that foot. And I remember one bloke saying to me, classic bloke thing to say, as I was going down, he said, you go up like an elite and you come down like you're a real novice. I was like, yes, I have a broken foot. So I just finished it, and funnily enough, about 5 hours before the finish, I came back up and met my husband again, who just, I don't know, he'd just gone slowly for some reason, and picked him up. So we actually finished it together. So it turned from a total nightmare into, well, that's a really great 5 hours of memory of going with him, and the time was fine. It was just really frustrating. And then it was broken, and that was that. And I thought, well, it'll mend. They've mended before. This was the third time across my feet. And this time it just took forever. And so that's why I didn't do anything else really until 2025, because it took from then all the way through to 2025 to properly mend. And it was one of those.
And was that a decision that you'd taken? I'm not going to do anything that might risk this again until this is as healed as it's going to heal. Was that a decision that you took? Or were you, because that's quite a long period of time as well, isn't it?
That's how long it actually took. And I think it's this, I think stress fractures are one of those. And I mean, yes, I'm going to always be exposed to a stress fracture just because of the way my feet are constructed. I think the front of your heel bone, which is where I get them, doesn't mend particularly well because it's just a long bone with not a lot of blood supply. And I think with stress fractures, it's you never know when they're properly mended, and you can come back slowly, and then one day they go, no, I'm not playing, and they go again, and you can do all the right things, and they sometimes just don't want to heal. And on this occasion, it was I tried to come back a few times thinking it was mended, looked like it was mended, and then it just went again. So it was one of those really, really frustrating things that I think happened to more athletes than we probably know. And I think it's really easy to blame yourself around stress fractures and to think it's your fault or you're overdoing it. But sometimes it just is one of those. And one day, well, they said it's non-union, so it will never completely heal, but it's stable. And then one day it just seemed to be okay again. And that was in sort of April, roughly April 25. It just suddenly went, okay, I'm good to go. It was like for no reason. And of course I was really nervous about it, but it just seemed to be okay, which is why I was able to take up that summer spine place in the June, because it was fine.
Before, I love that. Yeah, April, everything's fine. Let's go and run 2 days.
I've been training.
Yeah. So before we go to 2025 summer spine race, for people who maybe are dealing with a stress fracture, what would your advice be to them?
So I think if you think you've got a stress fracture, make sure you get it checked out. I mean, I think that's the first thing. That little ache can actually, and it's never just the one session, it's always that it's been growing for a while, doing its thing for a while, and then one day it just says enough. So it's never going to be that one session where you get it. It's just going to have been a period where suddenly you get it. I mean, don't forget, I'm now 55. So back then, I was 50, 54, 55. And so when it went, I was 52 going on 53. And I think people now talk about it really openly, but menopause, low estrogen really starts to hit bones. And I think a lot of women become much more susceptible around that period without maybe knowing it. And I was at that cusp where nobody ever spoke about perimenopause, menopause. Davina McCall hadn't come out and said, you know, let's all talk about it. So we didn't really. We just cracked on and got on and did it. So probably in that really critical period of going into perimenopause, I wasn't thinking about, am I taking my vitamin D? Am I doing all the things I should be doing? What about HRT? All the stuff now is out there that people like Renee McGregor are talking about. And so people are aware they should be looking after their bones. I just assumed with all the weights, with everything else I did, my bones would be like ox-like and it would all be completely fine. And so I guess because I have a structural issue that lends itself to stress fractures, I assumed it was always going to be the structural issue that was causing the stress fractures. In fact, having had DEXA scans, I'm actually always going to be susceptible to fractures generally. So I just need to be careful. But in terms of advice to people, if you are likely to be susceptible, and all of us are doing so much on our feet, we're probably all at some level susceptible to stress fractures. Then they take time. And that's the really hard thing for most athletes. It's saying, okay, I'm now injured and now I need to stop. And we're all really bad at stopping and letting things mend, because I think we're all quite driven and we think we can will ourselves better. It's not really happening. I'm not really injured. If I just keep going, one day it'll miraculously get better. So I think it's a stop and then find something else. If you want to cross train, and you can cross train, stay really, really fit. And then when you come back, you've got to come back so slowly compared to what you think you could come back. This idea of run 1 minute, walk 1 minute, all of this is so dull. But all of this is absolutely critical, particularly if you've been off your feet or off your legs because you haven't been able to use them because of a stress fracture. Even if you're super fit and your heart and lungs are all over it, your structure just isn't up to the pounding that comes with running. So the return can be another 6, 8, 10 weeks. And so this period of being out from running, you've got to be prepared for 3 to 6 months. And that's just one of those. And lower limb injuries, 6 months.
You know, and it can be really frustrating for people. There's nothing more impatient than an impatient injured runner, you know. And I think as well, there's lots of things as you the golden nuggets that you've just dispensed. Thank you so much for them, because I'm pretty certain there'll be somebody listening in whenever this goes out, and they'll be going, "That's me. That is me." So maybe this will be the moment that they'll go, "Maybe I should change what I'm doing," because there's other things you can do that's non-load bearing. There are activities you can do to stay fit, but to look after yourself too. Funny you mentioned menopause. We often ask somebody for a special / secret question, and when Anna Troup was coming on, I thought, who can I ask? So I asked Debbie Martin-Kinsani, if you could ask Anna Troup one question, Debbie, what would it be? And Debbie has put quite a lot of stuff on social media about her plans for this year. But she's been very open about how she is. And the question, and I quote, "How did menopause affect running? What did she do? What did Anna do to continue through midlife so strong?" So, how did menopause affect your running?
So if we go back,
Yep.
the Davina McCall thing hasn't happened.
Yep.
So we just carried on. So we didn't actually change anything. I was doing weights before. I carried on doing weights. I was cross-training or injured, and I had been on and off since 2011 with my feet, so I was used to that, and I just carried on doing that. I think it's the psychological side of it. For me, running was always a way of feeling better. So again, hindsight's an amazing thing, but if you look back and you think, oh, that was a bit anxious, or oh, that was a bit up and down, or oh, I lost my temper a bit more easily than I might have done anyway, then naturally the kids would have said back then, why don't you go for a run, mummy? You're always nicer when you get back from a run. Why don't you? So I guess there was just more of that. And I think, again, hindsight's an amazing thing. I stopped my executive career probably at that point where so many women do and say, I'm just done, and went non-exec at that point, which gave me a bit more flexibility, a bit more time. But again, with the benefit of hindsight and everything everyone knows now, would I have stopped? I don't know. Or would I have gone, actually, there's all sorts of other stuff happening here, and I need to think about that before I take that decision. So for me, I had a bit more time, which allowed me to do a bit more training. So I went from being a runner who was working very much full time and running was fun, to someone who had more time to train properly. And I think what you saw in those later results from sort of 2019 onwards was an endurance athlete who had time to properly train and properly rest in between training if I wanted to. So coming back to that rowing, when you spoke to the rowers who had stopped and gone with the lottery grants and were able to be full time, the big difference between them as athletes pre-lottery grants and post-lottery grants wasn't the amount of training they were doing, it was the amount of rest they were able to take in between the sessions, because they weren't running around doing a full-time job.
Yeah.
And if we come back to the point that bodies only really know stress, if you're working full-time and trying to run, and then you throw menopause at that as well, all your stress levels are miles and miles and going up. And I, at that point, just said enough, stopped my full-time career, went non-exec. And so the stress has changed and I just had more time. So I think probably what's allowed me to get through that as an athlete that looked like she was getting stronger was possibly an athlete that just had more time to train, and the stresses, or the way those stresses were sort of, I suppose, spread out over a life changed from lots and lots of work stress and a bit of training stress to much more training stress and much less work stress and more rest. So I think the answer to Debbie, who I think is still working full time, is you just got to add up the stresses. And when you hit menopause, they get worse.
But thank you for that, because that's an insight with hindsight, as you say, looking back, and that's what's worked. That's what's worked for you. So thank you very much. Thank you to Debbie for the question, and thank you for answering it so honestly. 2025 summer spine, April. You said your foot's feeling all right. You've been 3 years away from the spine previously. How were you feeling in Edale in June 2025?
So absolutely, I mean, that was, I've never felt so awful, if I'm honest. So nervous on that start line. I hadn't slept literally. I mean, I'm not great at sleeping the night before a race, but I didn't sleep at all. There was a church bell not down the road, and I heard every quarter of an hour all the way through the night. So it was hideous. I woke up with the most awful headache. I was like, maybe I'm sick, maybe I can't do it. And Richard just was like, no, shove a paracetamol down, get to the start. And I couldn't eat half a piece of toast. So everything about that spine start was just dreadful. And I think probably, again, hindsight, brilliant. This was the moment where I found out, was I still a runner? Was I going to get even, 3 miles down the road? Was my foot going to hold out? Could I do it? And everything was sort of there on that moment. And of course, the spine start, everyone piles off down the road, and I never do. So that wasn't abnormal. But it did take sort of 10 miles and, heart rate through the roof, and I still feel awful. And then everything starts to calm down. And I start to just do my own thing, and I can do my stuff on my own, and that's perfect. But it was a really, it was a hideous experience.
Can I ask, can you detail what was feeling awful? Was it worried about your foot, or were you anxious about the race? Were you anxious about people looking at Anna Troup? What was?
I'm not, I mean, you asked me earlier about training and motivation. I mean, I'm not actually someone who loves racing. I've never loved racing. We went through a period of doing quite a lot of racing, because that was Richard trying to stop me feeling nervous about racing. Like, the more we do, the more you'll realise it's totally fine. And so I think for me, I hadn't raced for ages. So all of that old style, I feel sick, I don't love racing, came back again. But I think I really wanted to still be a runner. And I think if this all went wrong, it would have just been, just so soul destroying. I spent sort of 2.5 years making sure I could stay fit to come back and be a runner. Maybe I wasn't going to be a runner anymore. And I, in many ways, I'm really lucky. I do have a bit of a multifaceted life. So it's not that I'm only a runner, but I'd seen myself as fundamentally, that was a key part of me. So I would have been giving something up that I wasn't quite ready to give up. I come back to, you want to will yourself fit, you want to will yourself capable. I wasn't scared of, could I finish it? That, once I'd started, I knew I'd be totally fine. The distance by then didn't worry me. I'd been up the course 3 times. It was much more about, am I physically, am I still an ultra runner? Or am I going to have to start to rethink that part of my life? So I think that's what was really making me feel so nervous.
John's silly question of the episode. Did you find an answer to that question? Are you still a runner?
I am still a runner. I think I'm a wiser runner because I think I've realized I can't just run. If I want to run, I will always have to mix it up with other training now. I think structurally, I just physically can't do the running I would like to do. So what I do now, again, because I have that little bit more time, being that bit older and having a bit more flexibility around work, is I walk, I hike. I realized what I really love. When my foot was coming back, I made a sort of pact with the devil. It was like, if my foot mends, as long as I can hike, I'll give up the running. so, so and to this day, the hiking, being able to get out in the hills, being able to walk miles, for me is almost as fulfilling as being able to run them. And in fact, I actually see more. When you're running, it tends to be, oh, I'm looking at my watch, or I'm, moving as fast as I can, or I'm pushing up a hill. When you're walking, none of that really matters. So you're just a calmer individual. So I think I've realized I'm just always going to have to mix in the walking, mix in the cycling and the watt bike, and mix in everything else. And then the running will be what the running is. Is that perfect for winning races? Definitely not. But is that where it's at? Probably. So
You've reminded me of with an episode with Andy Campbell, who a few years back set a new FKT on the West Highland Way in the winter. And one of Andy's tips was to people was go hiking. If you want to be a good runner, go hiking, get time on your feet, get up the hills. So it's good to hear that you're bringing that back to me, and I'm sure bringing it back to a lot of other people. What was fantastical about 2025 was that Anna Troup won the spine race outright, which must have been an amazing feeling. I am an avid dog watcher, both in the winter and the summer. But to win the race outright, and this is a thing I've had tried to have a conversation. Not a lot of people will take me on with this, but about the rise of female ultra runners. And in the last decade, I think it's been happening that females runners are winning races outright. There's not just a female and a male race. There's a race. So what did that mean to you to be the outright winner of the summer spine race?
I mean, honestly, if you come back to the beginning of that race, what mattered to me was touching that wall with 2 feet intact. That actually was the most important thing for me at that time. I am one of these people who only races the women. I don't really think about what the men are doing. So so it was amazing to win. And it was fabulous to win outright. But actually, for me, it was just that validation of all those years of training. It had come right, and it was much more about my own performance, if that makes sense. It wasn't necessarily about the win or the outright win, although that was fun. I think coming back to that male female long distance piece, I think over 250, 260 miles, we can be really competitive because anything can happen. You're problem solving. And everybody's problem solving. So I think it does level the playing field. And so I think we can do amazing things in terms of the overall field. And those other 2 summer spines, I come second both times. So I knew that it was possible to get up towards the top. I just never really think about it. I suppose, particularly in 2025. In 2022, I went out to win and to beat my own record. That was what mattered to me in that race. So that was a definite strategy. 2025 was just like, I'm just so glad to be here. I just want to enjoy this, and that was just an amazing feeling to finish so well. It was a bit of a fairy tale ending. Let's put it that way.
Definitely, 5 hours ahead of anybody else, which is quite phenomenal. I know it's a long race, it's a long way, but brilliant. And sorry, I must go back. How were your feet at the end?
They were great. There was no issues at all, and that was what was so fantastic. But then I went off and did other things all summer, and then I did RAS, and then I ended up with another bone bruise. So it just shows that there is only so much older bodies, or my older body, can actually take, and I think that's what I'm learning for 2026.
Yeah. Summer Spine is in June. Race Across Scotland's in August, is it? August.
Yeah.
So we spoke with Ian Bethune, who had done and won Race Across Scotland as well. But what was your recovery? Was there any recovery between June and August, or was it just a case of? Sorry, let me scrub that. How long did it take you to feel that you were recovered from the spine race after June 2025?
So I've got lots of data now on doing these long races and then coming back to training. And I think when I look back at data, I always feel ready to train again after 2 weeks, but I'm not back to pre-race sort of strength and fitness till 3. So I guess
Sorry,
that's how long.
What do you do in that 2 weeks?
The first week I don't do anything really, but the second
Okay.
week I'm starting to. I mean, as soon as my feet feel fine, as in, because your feet are just a bit sore after these races. Forget my dodgy feet; they're just a bit sore. So I'm back to sort of day 2 or 3. I'm starting to feel I can stand up for a whole day. I can walk 4 miles, whatever. And then by the end of that first week, I'm back to walking as far as I want, but slowly. And then that second week, I start to feel like I can genuinely do stuff. Sometimes on, I don't know, day 10, I'll go for a small run, think I'm ready, then realize I'm not ready. Then I'll go back to just hiking. And then 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, I'll be back on a watt bike, happily training again. But it's just my training numbers won't be back until 3 weeks. And that
Okay.
but the reality is, and everything that the physiology tells us, there's no way I'm mended. And if the bones, there's no way the bones have regenerated, and the nervous system is probably all over the place. But in terms of what my body can do, it's 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, it's tried and tested. And in Race Across Scotland, did you feel any after effects of the spine race throughout that? No?
No, and actually, I stupidly ran a lot of that first 50 miles and ran it quite fast and really loved it. And Race Across Scotland's such a different race because you've got no backpack, you've got tiny pack, you've got crew, it's so easy, inverted commas, to go too hard, because it's just you can run, you can be a runner, particularly in that first section. So I made myself incredibly sick because that's what I do if I go out too hard, which forces you to slow down. But then I was really surprised to find at 200 miles I could still really run. So I think for me, I was fully recovered. It was the cows in Race Across Scotland that really stymied me, because I found myself climbing barbed wire fences, trying to go around fields because they were just so huge. The flocks were just so massive, or the herds. It was just, yeah.
Speak to me about cows. Are you a fan of cows?
No.
No. So Johnny Logan, one of our listeners, when he heard that I was doing the Spine Challenger South, and I'd spoke about cows, I was like, oh, I'm not very sure. He worked with cows previously as a farmer, and what he was saying, he says, just speak to them in monotone about absolutely anything, about football scores, about what's on the TV, what films are coming to the cinema. Just talk to them. I've not had the chance to do that yet. How did you, if you enter a field with cows in it, what goes through your mind first of all, and how do you get to the other side?
Well, so generally, I've had lots of fields of cows in them, but they've been off to one side, or they've been off
Yeah.
to the other side. And I think in Race Across Scotland, because there were 2 or 3 men that were going through just ahead of me, I think that attracted the cows to the middle of the field. And they were these huge, I'd say huge numbers, these big herds. And when they all sort of line up and just look at you, and then they start all coming towards you, for me, that's just a no. I can't go through the middle. So a couple of times I did manage to go all the way around, taking a big detour all the way around. But there was one occasion where they were just coming at me. I couldn't go around them, and that was exit the field and try and nav my way around that field.
Yeah.
So they really slowed things down a number of times.
We spoke to Dave Molden, who did Race Across Scotland too, and he spoke about getting through electric fences and all that sort of stuff to avoid cows, because the cows are gathered in a corner because that's where the food was.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get past that. So, but you also mentioned the two-worded phrase earlier on, problem solving. That's what you've got to do, isn't it? That's what you've got to do.
You've got no choice. It's that, or I mean, that's where the trail goes. So you've got to find a way picking up the
Yeah.
trail.
Ah, man, Anna, we've been speaking about an hour. I think we've asked 2 questions for the question set. But it's all good stuff. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. Right, it would be remiss of me. We've mentioned feet a few times. I'm becoming a wee bit obsessed with feet and foot care. What do you do when you're not running? What's your foot care? How do you prepare for a race? How do you prepare your feet for a race?
So I'm lucky with my feet. I don't really do anything with them.
Okay.
So they generally just, I shove my waterproof socks on. I tend to sort of train in my waterproof socks a lot because I live in the Lake District, so that's pretty
Yeah.
wet. So I suppose my feet are used to a sock shoe combination that I'd wear in a spine, for example. You're always going to lose a toenail or two. That's just, being an ultra runner. And so that's that I expect to happen. But generally, my feet are fine. So I'm lucky.
You okay if I ask you a few questions about feet?
Yeah,
Yep,
go
yep.
for it.
Some people will lubricate their feet, some people will put talcum powder in their socks. Do you just put your socks on and go?
So I put Asos, just a brand of chamois cream, the stuff that I would use for cycling, on the inside of my waterproof socks and a little bit on my feet, and that's it. And then
Okay.
that's good to go. And then when I get to an aid station, I take socks and shoes off so that my feet dry, and then it's just
Mm,
same again and go. And so
right.
it's a really straightforward routine.
Okay. I think that's a key, isn't it? Lucy Gossage spoke about that as well, about having time at a checkpoint, aid station, to let air into your feet, let them dry, to stop
Yeah.
anything major happening. Socks. What type of socks do you
I'm a
use?
deck shell girl, always deck
Okay.
shell, always the ones that come up to my knees. And
Yeah.
if it's really hot in the summer, I'll just push them down.
Can I ask? I've got the ankle pair of the purple and pink ones that I see in your pictures. Are they the light ones, but all the way up? Because the ones I've got, the purple and blue ones, but they're the ultra light deck shells. Because I find the full, if I call them the full ones, they get too hot for me. So the light ones, or have you got a preference to what you wear?
I don't know which ones I've got. They almost feel like they're slightly compressed around the ankle, but I don't know if that's the ultralight or I think the new ones are called ultralight, aren't they?
Maybe I'm not sure. But
I
anyway, yours are full length.
always full length because you can just push them down.
Yeah.
If it's really cooking. Whereas if it is a high water for any reason and they get into your socks, well, you may as well not be wearing them.
Yep.
So it's just for me, it's just easier to have the long ones. Plus, if it's a bit chilly and I've decided to go with a skort, then it means that I'm not quite as cold because I've, half my legs are covered. So it's
Yeah.
like not quite leggings, but not quite.
Yeah. What about on top of the socks? What shoes is your preference?
Well, because of my feet, I have to have a big heel toe drop. So I end up with the Asics, and it's the Fuji Trabucos that seem to work because they're good and wide. I always wear the men's because I've got really wide front feet. And just, yeah, shove those on. And they seem to have reasonable lugs. Would I prefer at times to be in some fabby mud claw? Yes, but I just can't. So I've gone with what I can wear.
Okay. Stephen would have went in a bad mood. Not a bad mood, but he would not have liked it if I hadn't asked that question. Stephen is our shoe person. So thank you. Thank you. Um, is that because of you've mentioned about the structure of your foot that's what works for you?
Yeah, it's quite hard to find the trail running shoes that are really big heel toe drops and with decent lugs. It is actually not an easy game. A lot of them or a lot have lovely rockers which make you feel like you're super fast and make you super fast, but that rocker will press me straight onto a bit of my foot that breaks. So I can't have
Mm,
anything with a rocker. So take out the rocker, take out those that are flat or only a 2, 3, 4 mil drop, and I'm left with not many. So the Asics is just something that seems to work.
okay, cool. Thank you. Big shout out to Asics. Brilliant. Um, Eat. to eat? I know there's lots of checkpoints. We can speak about Alston lasagna. We can do all of that. What was the thing that you ate on the spine race? Any one of your spine races? There's been 4 of them, I think. Any one of them. What's been the best thing you've eaten?
It's whatever I can get down generally, but
Mm.
usually beyond Hawes, it's just rice, cheese, butter. That's it.
Rice, cheese, and butter. And what? How are you taking that in?
Spoon.
So it's all in one bowl. Rice, cheese, and butter in a bowl.
Yeah, because it's, and
Wow.
that's, the rice seems to go down better than other stuff. I mean, later on, if someone hands me, like someone handed me a pasty at Garrigill, the nice lady at Garrigill, and then I can eat that. But in the aid station, I'll just eat as much rice, cheese, and butter because it's got salty. It's salty. I add salt, but then there's that nice salty, cheesy, buttery. The butter, you need the butter, or it won't go down. But there's just a limit to what I can actually eat. So that's as much of that as I can get down.
So, and on the go between aid stations, what are you snacking on them? Do you even think about using gels or anything like that, or is it all whole food?
Yeah, I can't do gels. I can't do any of that. I don't have anything in my bottles. I just have some water with a bit of lemon juice. I suppose in my pockets I'll have some chocolate. Maybe I'll get it down. Maybe I won't. I always have cans of the Starbucks espresso coffees.
Hmm.
They're fabulous because I've got caffeine, sugar, a bit of milk. So chuck those down, every few hours, every 4 hours, whatever. That will at least give me something. Um, and then it's just, yeah, what a bit of cake, whatever random stuff happens to be in a pocket, I will try. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if I get a load down at the aid stations,
Mm.
I'm pretty fine. I'm clearly not fine, and I would clearly do a lot better if I could eat consistently.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned race across Scotland because you're running faster, and it made you feel sick. Has that always been an issue?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because I
I'm
think,
always really sick after 50, 60 miles. Yeah.
okay, okay. Um, is that something that you would like to get on top of?
Oh, definitely. And I think many men, women runners, whoever feels sick would love to get on top of it. I think the big thing now is I've given up worrying about it. It
Okay.
is just an is. And if I get on top of it one day and I find the winning solution, that will be amazing. And if I don't, I know it's not gonna, it doesn't need to be race ending. Maybe I don't go as quickly, but it's not race ending.
Okay. I mentioned 4 spine races. You went back in January this year, winter spine. And I don't know, you ever get, if you don't know if you ever get good winter spine conditions. We certainly got winter spine conditions this year. How
Yep.
did you how did you find it?
Um, well, I know no one believes this, but I think the summer's harder.
Oh, Anna, you know what?
I mean, how did I find the conditions? They were what I expected. They were what I was dressed for, and they were what I had in my pack for. So, were they cold on Crossfell? Yes, but did I have 2 or 3 extra coats on? Yes. So that was okay. I was wearing a proper, full-on bulletproof, waterproof for the whole thing, because the reality is I wasn't ever moving fast enough to really get hot and sweaty. So, and it vented. So I was pretty dry underneath the whole time. Was it hilarious being blown off our feet on Kinder? I don't love that. Mostly because I feel that I'm not in control because the weather's in control at that point. And if you get blown the wrong way, you were going down a big. So it was blowing the right way, fortunately. I'd done a race in France where we'd had to slide down snow on our bottoms. So we were all in waterproofs. When I just went, okay, on to bottoms. And then everyone followed. That was quite fun. So we must have created a huge slide for everyone behind us, but that worked quite well. And then really it was just wet and sort of UK winter, most of it. It was just wet, then a bit dry, then wet, then dry, then snowy, then I think underfoot it was very icy, but I'd gone in expecting that, and I had studs in my shoes. So I had loads of studs in my shoes, which meant that actually I didn't need to put on my micro spikes at all. So the studs worked really, really well. So I felt quite secure. The mud was worse than the ice because once you're in the mud, you were just sliding and it was thick and gloopy, but it was I think the difference with the winter spine is there's a lot of people. This feels like there's more spine crew out. I think there are. There's more spine angels. There's more places to stop. And I think actually it's all those different places to stop, people to chat to, support, as in spine support team, mountain rescue vans. Those are all opportunities to stop and have a chat as opposed to get on with it. So I think it makes it a slower race. I don't think it's just the conditions. I mean, I've never been in Greg's Hut before, but this winter I spent 2 hours in Greg's Hut because that was fun, and John Bamber was there and we had noodles. And usually I see John Bamber and it's just covered in midges and it's just a disgusting place to be at the net. So there's no way I'm stopping there for more than 2 minutes to have a chat. Whereas at Greg's Hut, when it's warm and it's sociable, it's easy just to while away a couple of hours. So I think it's a really different race, but I think the summer is harder because there's less water and less people. And people lift you. Whereas if otherwise you're just in your own head and there's no one else around, so you have to crack on and do it, which is a different sort of race.
And we've spoken about women winning races outright. We've spoken about that. But in the Winter Spine 2026, January 2026, you finished first female. That was quite a brilliant achievement too. How did that feel?
Oh, that one, I'm so glad to get to the finish line because for the first time ever, I got the ultra leans and my head wouldn't stay up on its own. So I spent the last 15 miles holding my head up myself. So in all of those interviews and as I cross the line, I feel like I've got toothache, but I'm actually holding up my head. So I looked ridiculous, and it meant I was rolling down hills, and the whole of that period was I just want to reach the end. So yes, was it fabulous to win? Yes, of course, it always is amazing to win, but I was just desperate to get across the line.
What goes through your mind in those final miles crossing the Cheviots?
It's been different every single time. So 2021 is the fastest I've got across the Cheviots, and that was because I just was desperate to get to Kirkyeton before it got dark, because that 2021 I've never really navved on my own. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I just want to get off the Cheviots before it's dark. So that was my sole motivation, and it was just like almost racing the light. So that was a completely different feeling to 2022, where I was just chasing a time, knew what I was doing, but was also desperately dehydrated. That was a massively hot race. So I'd really pushed the limits in that race, and I just was really, really dehydrated. So it's just like, that was about, let's get down and get some fluid in. And then 2025 in the summer was just, this is amazing, and I am going to finish. And so that felt quite a happy time over that, and also desperate not to fall over, because I managed to fall a couple of times. So I should hold it together and do not trip. Because I was really struggling with sleep deprivation because of that whole night of no sleep before the summer. So the Cheviots were just feeling really sleep deprived. So that was just really super to get to the end. And then the winter was just, I literally was counting to 20. Count to 20, take a breath, carry on, count to 20, take a breath, roll down a few hills, fall to one side. That was just, am I ever going to get to the end?
Your face actually changed when you said in the winter. Your face actually changed, so I get that. Yeah. I get that. How do you mentioned about the more people in the winter, and you've mentioned a few times about living in the lakes. And what does the ultra running community? What does that mean to you?
So every single one of these bigger races and race series, if you like, has its own community, which is really interesting. And they do cross, but there's definitely, and you make real friends across all those different communities. So when we lived in the south, Centurion was our, I suppose, ultra running community, and we used to volunteer, and the kids grew up volunteering, and that was a proper community. And I still see those people at races, and that's always really great. Then Lakeland 100 and Lakeland 50, as you know, well, that's a massive community, and you really feel part of that community too. The Spine has its own community, and I found that Race Across Scotland and GB Ultras is another fabulous community. So and the people cross across all of them, and the volunteers often cross across all of them. I think there's something just really special about the way ultra runners are just so welcoming. It's a really truly welcoming sport. I think possibly for people looking at these different communities from the outside, it must feel everybody knows each other. It must be a bit cliquey. It's really hard to get into if you've never done one before. And then I think you do one, and the Spine is a real classic for this. And that community just takes you in, and those volunteers are just there for all of you. And the minute you start, or the minute you even sign up, really, you are part of that community. No one thinks, have you done it before or not? Do we know you? It's just this huge welcoming group of people desperate for everybody to do as well as they can. So for me, it's just a very generous community, whichever race or race series you're doing. So for me, it's really special. It's where I've made many, many really good friends.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And I totally wholeheartedly agree. Just this very day, on the 20th of the March, because as I've said, I'm taking part in the Challenger South. I've been invited to a WhatsApp group today. So I joined the WhatsApp group. It has went crazy because everybody's been asked to join today. And there's just all these notifications coming in about different things, but I'm sure it'll be really invaluable. I know the Facebook page for the Spine, there's lots of questions get asked, and sometimes people think they're asking a silly question, but people see it and they go, "Oh, that makes perfect sense. That's the question I had." So the WhatsApp group thing is something I'm really looking forward to being a part of, and that's another element to that ultra running community, isn't it? The sharing of information. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
The only thing though, John, about those WhatsApp groups is I find them terrifying because I read them and have I missed something? Should I be doing that? And before you know it, you're second guessing yourself. And I have to stand back and go, hang on, Annie, you've done this loads of times. They've not done it once.
Yeah, that's a very good word of warning. Yeah, there are many experts on the end of a phone keyboard. Yes.
Many experts who may not have started the race. So
you have mentioned a Henry Ford quote before. And the Henry Ford quote is thus: if you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. How powerful is that for you?
So I think for me that just says it's really easy to think your way out of doing something, starting to do something, and I think that imposter syndrome is quite rife. It makes us think that everybody else can do it, but we can't do it for whatever reason, or that's them. This is me, and maybe I can, or maybe I can't. And the winter spine was a bit like that for me. I'm not naturally a winter person, and everybody said how hard it was, and so I thought, oh, I'll just stick with the summer. That's much more me. And it was only because everyone kept saying, oh, have you done a winter spine? It's like, no. That I thought, okay, finally, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to give it a go. And again, it was one of those, I'm not sure whether I can, but I have to think that I can. And if I think that I can, I will be able to give it my best shot. And it's about ticking those things off. I know I can do the distance. I know I can carry the weight. I know I can. And then once you've done, I can, then you've prepped as much as you can. And then it's just jump off into the unknown and see what happens. So I think it's a great quote because it is so easy to think we can't. So, and I think that's what we're trying to do with the WhatsApp women's group that we set up for the Spine Support Women's Group. And that really is about encouraging women to enter because so many think they can't. And actually, if we can help them think they can, that's 99% of the way there, because we know when they do, they train really hard and they have a really great successful in terms of finish rate. So it's just about taking that leap and thinking they can.
I was going to give you an elevator pitch there, but I think you've just done it. But if somebody, let's do it. If there's some women thinking about entering any one of the spine, because I think there's 7 different spine races now when it happens, isn't there? From the full thing down to the challengers and the sprints, and then they've got the mountain rescue ones as well. if there's somebody, we'll speak specifically to women actually, because you just mentioned it. What would you say to them if they were thinking, if they were considering doing it? What would you say?
I say, first of all, think about, and again, this is a really McGregor phrase, but think about your training age. And so if you're just starting out, then make it a progression. So make that spine something that you will do in, say, 5 years' time, as opposed to this year. And then have a pathway to that. So by the time you get there, you are physically, structurally, mentally prepared to do it. Because I think it's really easy to go, well, I've done a half marathon, or when I was in university, I did a half marathon, and now I'm 20 years further on, but I'm still that person in university, so I must have all that fitness still, and I'm just going to jump straight in and go and do a spine. And I think what you see is people getting quite injured because they haven't trained consistently. So I think if you really want to do it, be really honest with where you are, and maybe you're only 6 months away because you've been doing 100-mile races and you've been doing lots of hard stuff, and then that's just the natural progression, at which point crack on and do it. I would say if you've not done some really big hundreds with lots and lots of vert-ins, so like a UTMB with 10,000 meters and 100 miles, I think is actually quite hard, and for most people is going to take you through a couple of nights, so that's actually quite good for a full spine or a Challenger North, because you've got more vert, it's tough, and you've got more, you probably got a couple of nights of no sleep, and they start at 6 o'clock, so you've probably not had a good night the night before. So you're starting to get quite good at knowing what sleep deprivation feels like for you. If you haven't done that, scale it back, start smaller, and build your spine journey through the smaller races into the medium races into the big race, because along that way you'll just build a set of skills. But if your training age is like 2, 3, or 4, maybe build your training up first and make it a fantastic progression into a spine race. So I think that's what I'd be saying. I think there is just now this sense of, right, we'll just jump in because it's Britain's most brutal and we've got to tick that box. And there's so many other really fun races to do on the way where you'll meet great people and you'll learn a set of skills and grow confidence while getting fitter and stronger structurally, that the spine doesn't have to be the start point. It can be a later end point to a journey.
And also, your end journey, your end experience will be a hell of a lot better too, and more enjoyable, won't it? So thank you very much. Brilliant.
Well, it's like, when you do a Lakeland 100 and Mark Laithwaite says, shake the hand to the person of your left or right, now which one of you is going to finish? Because only one of you is going to finish.
And then you've got that tight hand.
So if you've got that 50-50 chance, you want to make sure it's you that's that 50-50. And the only way you get there, I think, is by having that real confidence in your training and the prep that you've done. And I think it's really hard to do that prep without having done other races for something like the spine, unless you've been hiking for miles and miles and you're a really brilliant long distance hiker and you know that stuff. And then maybe the only thing you've got to worry about is some cutoffs, or not, because you can hike fast enough not to worry. So I think it's just knowing where you are on your own personal physical journey.
Brilliant. Like 100, I sat in that hole and I was the person that never finished that year. But we might go back. What future challenges or racers are in your head just now, Anna? What's inspiring you just now?
Well, I got a place from the wait list in TDG this week.
Wow.
So that was a bit unexpected because I didn't think I'd got a place, and then suddenly, a bit like the spine, the wait list moves and suddenly I've got a place. So that is inspiring me. It slightly terrifies me because I don't know whether my knees will hold up the sort of up and down and that vert, but that is what I will really definitely want to challenge myself with this year.
Tour de Géants. When is that in the year? Is that August, September?
September 13th. Yeah.
Okay, you're going. You know the date. September 13th.
Well, I'm going. I've paid. I'm going. As long as I don't get injured in the meantime, I'm going.
Ah, fantastic. Is that a bucket list one for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
More because everyone says it's wonderful. I love the Alps. I love that area from doing UTMB, and it gives me an excuse to go back, and it gives us an excuse to recce the whole thing, which we keep talking about, but we've never done. So there's lots of good reasons to go and do it. It's a new adventure with no expectation. Just go out and have an amazing time.
Brilliant. So very excited. I'm excited for you. Fantastic. Fantastic. Last couple of questions. We always ask our guests to give us a local dialect word, and we've got we put them in this dialect dictionary, and there's a whole host of weird and wacky and wonderful words and phrases in there. What word or phrase would Anna Troup like to add into the dialect dictionary?
So it's a very Lake District phrase because it's to do with Lake District Herdwick farming, and it's a gather.
I gather. Okay. Can you give some context to that?
Yeah, so the Herdwicks are, well, they're obviously roaming on the fells. You see them, the smiley sheep. Everybody knows the smiley sheep when they come to the lakes. And then they have to get them down 6 times a year to do various things. It could be, for lambing or tupping or whatever it happens to be, shearing. They have to bring them down. And it's a real community affair. So it takes all the different shepherds from the different farms in the region with their dogs to go up. They bring all the sheep down because they are hefted to certain areas of their fells, but they do intermingle. So they bring them all down together and then they split them. So it's a big community day. And I just love the pictures as all of those sheep come down and they block roads, and it's just a brilliant thing to witness. So, and it's a gather, and it's just, yeah, it also feels like the beginning of an ultra, doesn't it? That sort of big community all together. But so it's just a standard word, but I think it has a real connotation here.
That's brilliant, and you're right. It's very much like the start of an ultra marathon. I think I've seen that on something like Countryfile or something. I'm sure yeah. I'm sure I've seen that before. Brilliant. I was getting a good fuzzy feeling when you were describing it, so thank you for that. And then our final question is always a musical one. We've got a playlist that we started, I think, in season 3, so I think it's playlist number 12 now. And again, it's an eclectic mix of music, whether that's a song, a track from whatever artist that you want to add in. What would Anna Troup like to add in for the Young Hearts Run Free listeners?
It's got to be the Killers, and it's got to be Mr. Brightside.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. A reason why?
So it's always been a favourite, but we were there at the O2 when it was the England match last year, me and the 2 girls, and we'd gone back for a second night because the first night had been so good. So we thought, we'll just go again. And they waited, and England were doing all the penalties, and then England scored the penalty that won the match, and at that point they kicked off with Mr. Brightside, and it was just the most amazing moment to be in a concert. It was huge. It was absolutely huge.
I'm not an England fan, right? But I got goosebumps there just when you were that happens at that moment. So this season we're talking about the World Cup, because we're in season 15 and it's going to run through when the World Cup's happening over in Canada, Mexico, and North America. Are you a football fan?
Not particularly.
Right, okay, but
everyone watches it when it's on.
Yeah. But maybe this is all we need. We've mentioned football in this season. That's it. That's maybe all we need to do. But Mr. Brightside is an absolute belter. That is on a previous playlist, but that's okay. That's a previous one, and that was added in by Fergie, Archivetrician. He says because they always play it 3 times in a row at the end of Archivetrician. I don't know if it's his presentation ceremony, whatever, but they play it 3 times in a row. So it's been a long time since Fergie was on. So the Killers, Mr. Brightside, is what will play us out in this episode. So Anna Troup, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Man, we've covered some stuff, haven't we? And it's been absolutely brilliant. But I wish you well. I wish you health and happiness for Tour de Géants, and I look for maybe you can come back and speak about that after you've been.
If I make the start line, for me now it's just about getting to a start line, John. Yes.
Yeah, and I would just like to confirm to the world that Anna Troup is still a runner.
Thank you.